back. In this video, we're going to go ahead and look at the properties of the rigid body and start to dissect it, and I'm going to start to go over and explain what does what and how it works so you can have a further understanding of dynamics and have better control over your simulations. Okay, so let's go ahead and do that. I'm going to go ahead and select this cube object, the active rigid body, and then I'm going to go over here under the Modify menu. I'm going to go to Rigid Body, and I'm going to click on Edit Rigid Body. And when we do that, we get this very large PPG. As you can see, it even needs the scroll bar on the side to be able to cover everything in this PPG. Okay. Now, right now, we're going to go ahead and focus on the inertial properties of this rigid body, of this active rigid body. So what are the inertial properties? Well, the inertial properties control a few important parameters here, like the mass, the actual weight of the object, as well as the center of mass of the object. Okay, so let's go ahead and go over this. First option here says use mass, and it's checked on by default. Obviously you want to use mass, but if you didn't want to, you could uncheck that and you can use density. So let's talk about mass first. You see 1 is here by default. This is set in kilograms, so right now this object, this active rigid body over here, is set to weigh 1 kilogram. Okay, so if we wanted it to weigh more, we can say, well, maybe we want it to weigh 100 kilos, 100 kilograms. Okay, we can set it using density instead of mass as well. So if we uncheck this box here, we can gray out the mass, and now we have access to the density parameter. Now, density is set up as the density is set up. This is the way that density works. Density is kilograms per softimage unit cubed. Edit that out of the video. Edit that out of the freaking video. Starting again in 3, 2, 1. Now the density of the object is set up by kilograms per softimage unit cubed of the object's volume. So density is more based on the volume, and you can figure that easily. Again, that's kilograms per softimage unit cubed. Okay, so if you're handy with math, it's not too hard to figure out. If you don't like to figure out all that math based on volume and density and all that, you can always check this box on here and use mass instead, which is the default option. I suggest you use mass. It's a little bit easier to set up. If you want something to weigh 100 kilograms, you just type in 100 for the kilograms. Okay. Down here we have a use center of mass, and it's off by default. We can turn that on, and we can change the center of mass. Now let me go ahead and zoom in on the object to show you what's going on here. So let me go over here and zoom in on this cube. I'm also going to switch to wireframe mode. And you can see we have this little blue square icon here in the center of the object. That little icon represents the center of mass of this object. By default, it's placed at the center point, or wherever the center of the object is located. In this case, in the center of the cube. But we can offset that easily by changing the center of mass right here. So we can change it in the X direction. So we can move it to -10. Or if we wanted to, we can type in a higher value, like -15 for example. Oops, not -51, -15, and move that another 15 units or -15 units over here to the left, or the negative x-axis. We can also move it in positive values, so we can move it to +10 or +15 or 18, really whatever you want. So you can move the center of mass, and by doing that you affect the way that this object reacts when it starts to get simulated. So instead of the center here, the center of mass being located in the center of the object itself, it can be located out here and be offset out here in distance. So now the object is going to kind of spin around that center of mass over here. So it totally changes the way that objects react and the way that they behave. Okay? So let me go ahead and uncheck that because I want the center of mass to be, well, the center of the object here. Alright, so that's going to cover it for the inertial properties of this object. There's so many more properties to go, so I've broken this down into several videos, and we'll talk about different properties in different videos. So now we got the inertial properties out of the way, we'll go ahead and move on to other properties of the rigid body, active rigid body cube over here in the next video.